Okay, so Chelsea, tell us who you are.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, I'm really happy to be here, and I am an IFS level one, although I'm lucky enough to be getting to do a level two this November. IFS coach, and so I'm also a certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, and so I'm also a licensed massage therapist. So I weave together body work and coaching and IFS, and that's something that really brought me to IFS was the way that it's described as how do they say it? It's like a body focused spiritual psychotherapeutic framework or something. It hits all of the all of the levels. And so I really well, I came to it through my own therapeutic healing journey, and then when I found it, felt like this is what I want to be doing with my life professionally. And but then in addition to that and alongside it, I'm actually the vice president of publishing at this nonprofit called the Swedenborg Foundation that is committed to making the works of this 18th century mystic Emanuel Swedenborg available to the world and promoting engagement with his ideas. And so I have like a boatload of knowledge of Swedenborg, of this guy's spiritual experiences and theology, and he wrote a bunch of books, and I've worked for many years producing videos for this YouTube channel called Off the Left Eye, where you can engage in really accessible, entertaining videos about this spirituality, this spiritual worldview. And so when I found IFS just through my own personal life, I then it kind of came around at the bend in an interesting way where I wasn't that wasn't my intention to connect IFS with Swedenborg, but then it just kind of happened. Actually, I credit Robert Falconer, and his publication of his book, The Others Within Us, because I had, my parts were sort of, okay, how do we kind of connect IFS with Swedenborg? Because there were so many amazing alignments, really. And so when Bob came out with his book, I was like, okay, here's a guy who obviously has interacted with Swedenborg, or at least I certainly suspect that because of what he writes in his book. I hadn't bought the book yet, but I heard his video and demo about it, and then I did buy the book, and he does have a section about Swedenborg in there, and then uh, got to. I was just so inspired to reach out to him, and we connected, and I was like, I want to do a book on IFS and Swedenborg. And so now we've just published in May this book called Opening the Inner World that explores Swedenborg, IFS, and spiritual healing. So that's my way overview of who I am, what I do, and why I'm here.
So fun. I mean, as an IFS mystic, someone who really believes that IFS is a path that can take you to the top of the mountain.
I love that. Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, I've tried so many different things. I'm a certified energy healer. I did like Dawn energy healing.
Well,
I've done International Coaching Federation certified, trainings like with the Coactive, Coaches Training Institute and what else? Other, coaches training stuff. And obviously I'm level 3 IFS trained, certified since 2010. I mean,
yeah.
I've tried a lot of different things. I mean, I have a list of like, it's this long.
Right.
It's
Yes.
it's wacky. I've tried like every yoga, right?
Yes. Yes. Right. Same. Didn't mention the whole yoga era, but yeah.
So much stuff. But I mean, if I knew something better, I would use it. I've
Yes.
never found it, so I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm all in on IFS. And I love that saying that people have that if when you're doing like your spiritual or personal development work, you need to commit at a certain point. Like when you're
Hmm.
starting, it's fine to try this and try that and try that. You know what I mean? Like, there's that phase where you just try lots of different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, you have to commit to a path and take it all the way up to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. I love that. Yep. Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like for me, IFS is like, okay, when you just get up to the higher and higher and higher like levels, you're like, oh, like I can barely breathe up here. But that's where that's what you need. And I love the idea of talking about Swedenborg as a person who, as a mystic, like we need these role models who
Yes.
show us what's possible for us as human beings.
Yes.
It makes me think about Yogananda,
Mm-hmm.
Autobiography
Mm-hmm.
of a Yogi. Like
Yeah.
I love like that's one of my favorite books of like a, spiritual person, right?
Yes.
And it's like his, that path of like I know I want it, I
Yep.
want. And so how do you get from like I want spiritual transformation to like getting to the other side? And like there's that whole journey where he's looking for his teacher, and he
Yeah.
says like when he found his teacher, he describes his teacher as a skyscraper of a human being.
Mm.
Ah, that's so yummy. And I just feel like, to be a skyscraper, you need to go dig, 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 dig down, 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 right? You need like 10 sub basements of like
Yes.
digging,
Yes.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
right? Like you need to go down into the shadow. You need to do that deep shadow work. And like,
Yeah.
what's going to help you do that? I don't care if it's Jungianism, I don't care what you use.
Yes.
You've got to use something to really dig down there,
Mm-hmm.
to root you, because the root is the heavy of the light. I love that
Yeah. Yeah.
saying.
Yes.
And so, this idea that like, okay, here's this guy, Swedenborg, who achieved something, who became a skyscraper of a human being. And so what can we learn from his life path? And
Yes.
like when we really find our role models, that's so yummy. And so I'm just excited to hear more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that stirs so many fun thoughts in me. And one is just that I did myself go through quite a journey of so I was raised in a religious community that actually centers Swedenborg's writings in like a faith religious way. And
Mhm.
so it's a pretty small, I mean, it's an international Swedenborgianism as a faith, and there's different denominations, but I just happened to be raised in that framework. But then in my journey and 20s and stuff like that, really kind of left pretty much all of that behind and was really interested in studying, um, well, the world religions. I was just really curious about that same sort of spirituality. All the different paths lead to the, top of the mountain, and being able to, what is that spiritual journey? Uh, and in my own life, for me, it really was what's going to help me heal, because even though I had all these great amazing sort of high octane spiritual ideas, like I was still suffering, still had all of this built up
Mhm.
trauma,
Yep.
everything inside of me. So it was really like, well, this is all useless, like nice, pretty pictures, pretty ideas, but what is going to help it really do something in me, and that's what led me to yoga and studying yoga and practices in that way, because I was really drawn to, like, okay, meditation, that really helps, like and so these different things that help me along the way, like you said, sort of leaving one thing for the next because it actually works. And so similarly, when I found IFS, it was like, oh, like another level of this actually works. And
Mhm.
then to have the experience of this is validating all of these things that I had already learned from Swedenborg, because, like you say, he's somebody who did it and really went there in himself. The amazing thing of Swedenborg's own journey is he was this guy who he lived in Sweden in the 1700s and was a scientist and a polymath, as it's called. Like he has, you can even like Google search like highest known IQs, and like Swedenborg's on that list. Like he was just this sort of brilliant mind, uh, and had this whole professional career. Served in the Swedish House of Nobles. He was like an assessor of mines, which just meant like he was an inventor. He just helped the Swedish economy in all of these interesting ways and did different things. And then in his mid 50s, he had a spiritual awakening, and applied. Some people just see a complete through line. Some people say, oh, he did a total shift there, like a 180, went from being this scientist to being now this theologian. But I think a much more interesting way to sort of view his life path is like this continuum of always wanting to study and understand and again go there in himself. And he was really interested in where do our thoughts and feelings come from, what are thoughts and feelings. And he so this spiritual inner world uh, came into view for him, and he just applied his same interests to that, his same passion in terms of wanting to observe and study and be fully having, not sort of in this lab coat observational way, but like in the he's in it himself, but then also observing it. And like, so he's got his parts, his parts are like, he even describes this being flooded, but then aware of a part of himself that was sort of calm and in the center of it and could, you know, observe the flood. And so then he's like, okay, wait, what are these different parts and how are they in relationship to each other? And, and then he sees it as connected to this uh, divine inflow, as he calls it, or he says the light of heaven. So like the spiritual world is this realm that is sort of all the realm of thoughts and feelings, the realm of love and wisdom, or what's false, or what's the opposite of love, harmful ways of being. And then, um, and he wrote a bunch of books, like he just devoted his whole life. He was actually offered this promotion by the king of Sweden. That was kind of his dream job. And that was this pivotal moment where he was like, nope, I'm not going to take it. I'm devoting my life to this, to doing this spiritual whatever this is. And so he just devoted his life to publishing books on it. And so we have, and actually he published anonymously for most of his career at that point. I mean, like in of his what people call his theological works, and until the very end. And so he eventually became known to be the author of his works. But so we have like 18 titles. And one way that Bob Falconer describes Swedenborg as a geographer of the spiritual world. And I just think that's a really great way of connecting to what Swedenborg offers. And Bob will also say, like, this is dense stuff to get into. Like, go ahead, you can. That's what the Swedenborg Foundation does. Is we fund a project that is he wrote in Latin. First of all, Swedenborg wrote in Neo-Latin,
Oh, okay.
because this was like still in the day when that's what everybody did. If you wanted to write something that anybody could, in sort of the scientific world could read and understand, you'd write it in Latin. But then right after he started uh, doing that, that was this moment when things shifted and the Latin didn't, or stopped being the like language you spoke at school. Then you had individual German, English, French, all the different languages changing their whole grammars and vocabulary to be able to, accommodate the different discourses. And so we translate Swedenborg's Latin into modern accessible English. And then we make those translations available for free on the Swedenborg.com website for people to like go there if you want to go there. And then, but we also do, like this, YouTube videos and books and stuff that engage with his ideas, because there's just so much richness there. So,
Yeah. So it sounds like he's very parts friendly.
yes, yeah. And like he, yeah, like he is describing multiplicity before anybody, like very much so in a lot of different ways I could get into. But another interesting thing to know about him was he was very focused on interoception. I mean, he didn't use that word, but that line of that we say in IFS all the time of where do you experience it, in or around your body, he did that for himself to orient to what he was experiencing spiritually. Whether it was, and for him, he often talks about interacting with spirits. And so he'll say, these spirits came in and they were, affecting my right hip, or something like that. And um, but then even within an individual's personal system, he first of all says we have levels to our mind that are very distinct. Um, but then within each level, there's a certain multiplicity. He talks about our these different vessels that we have, and that all of our how we grow and develop as individuals is how open or closed off these vessels are to love and wisdom.
Hmm.
That they get literally burdened. They get things stuck on them that make them less open to the inflow of
Uh-huh.
love and wisdom, and then they that gets softened, or and then they open up. And but so his whole description of vessels is very much like parts.
Mm-hmm.
Only when you're coming from an IFS perspective, you start from the get-go of being like interacting with a part as somebody who can talk back to you.
Mm-hmm.
um and Swedenborg sort of says that also, but in another way, where he just says every thought and feeling that we have is in the human form, and it's these thoughts and feelings that are vessels that then uh are either have beliefs or feelings that are interfere with that inflow of love and wisdom, or they're open and receptive and sort of live in alignment with that inflow. uh and so that's one of those tie-ins that's like very cool to see it just come to life, in IFS sessions. Like that's what you're doing. Even in the way that we talk about parts, like are they willing to like turn and look at you as self? And that can be such a pivotal, I mean, literally pivotal moment for a part to like feel and see something different than what they're believing and thinking is reality. And Swedenborg says that that's what vessels do. They turn toward the inflow. um,
This is fascinating. I mean, I love that he says these vessels, each one is like in the human form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that, people who don't believe that their parts are really like little people inside of them are never going to get the full benefit of IFS.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you don't take like the relationality that a part is an actual person inside of you that's totally sovereign,
Yes.
totally different than you,
Yes.
and you really allow the weirdness of that part to just arise and the
Yeah.
surprise, and you're like, whoa, I would not even know that, that's not me. That's not me. That's something different than me that's inside of me that I'm relating to.
Yes.
You know? So that's just beautiful that every vessel it's really in the human form. And I just think that's such an important issue. Why do you think that, like Sweden? I mean, this is so amazing to me. I've studied IFS, I've studied parts for decades. Do you have any idea about why Swedenborg hasn't been more, like in the IFS community? Because like this is so
Right.
cool, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I can respond to that, but I want to just note with your description of that, like the human form and connecting with parts, and that really real, it's a real relationship, if you really acknowledge it that way. And there's a term Swedenborg uses to describe, because he says if you're going to connect with this idea of a divine, he says that the divine is kind of the human form in essence, like the divine is a fully unburdened system, really, like, but in a divine, infinite, and eternal way.
Mhm.
Um, and so the divine is love itself and wisdom itself. And those are those two primary qualities that he says are distinguishably one. So they are one thing, just like one of the easy analogies is light. Like light is heat and light at the same time. We see by light, but we feel warmth. So that's kind of like the love and wisdom. They're the same thing, two sides of the same coin, but
Mhm.
we can imagine and interact with them as if they're separate from each other,
Mhm.
but they're actually one. That term can describe us and our parts. Like we are distinguishably one with our parts. Like it is our personal system. You can tell when something's a part of you versus not a part of you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really important to know where that boundary is. And yet, just like you're saying, on the level of one person's system, you can be in relation distinguishably one. Like there's a relationship there. There's a real reciprocity that has to happen. It's not a top down control or, everything that applies to relationships, consent, and everything is critical for the most healthily operating
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
system so that, you know, in Swedenborg's terms, our relationship to the divine is that way. Like we are a part of the divine.
Oh, but oh, that's giving me like goosebumps. Can
Yeah.
I say, because I feel like, can I just noodle here?
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like there is such an ideology that the divine is somehow above us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really a big fan of this idea of like servant leadership
Yeah. Yeah.
in our systems with our parts, that like the self, right, capital S,
Yes.
the self is not above the parts.
Yeah.
Like, so all hierarchy is like garbage,
Mm.
it's crap.
Right.
It's like just because a part is 2 or 3 or 4,
Yeah.
just because they might live in that kind of playful, childish realm or whatever, where even there is like a new, like just a grain of what my parts would call like, I think it's contempt, but it's like that attitude of like, oh, I know better, or like,
Right.
it's a little
Superiority.
patronizing. My parts have zero tolerance for patronizing, and I do
Right.
too. I'm like, that's managers.
Yes.
That's fine. Like, you are a
Right.
manager. No shame, no shade, no blame. But that is one way we can tell the difference between a manager and self, because self is not contemptuous ever.
Yeah.
It's not patronizing, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Like, it doesn't create a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Self is just there to like be in total reciprocity,
Yes.
developing the agency and sovereignty of the parts,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
right? To totally explore who they are and who they want to become.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So I never really thought of extending that idea
Yeah.
up the chain,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I feel like as you work with guides, a lot of us, we have our guides, and guides kind of, they're kind of like lower or higher level guides. They just get,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I never really thought about the fact that guides themselves are also just there to like, help you develop your sovereignty and your agency.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're not in a hierarchy with you. God's not better than you.
Yes.
Oh, this is delicious.
Yes. Yeah. And
Cool.
that's like, I mean, Swedenborg goes into such detail around this stuff that like the divine as divine love itself, it wants to give all of what it has and what it is to another. Like that's like what love is, for the other to then experience it as their own.
Mm.
So like that, and that's that being in that relationship of uh identity, this autonomy. So autonomously living in relationship with the divine, not from a place of hierarchy, but like, oh no, it's you, like that's the key. You're in self, and like everything, the most magic happens when you're in that place of feeling like I am extending compassion toward parts of myself. And that's exactly how Swedenborg describes how this inflow of the divine works. It says that like this love and wisdom from the divine, it flows into our self, our the vessel on the whole side of who we are, the vessel of vessels. As soon as it flows in, we feel as though it's us. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like the intent of the divine, that like no it makes me think of Bob Falconer. He often says like you need to get a better god, like if your god can't be like with you in the most hurting hellish places in your psyche and experience and memories, then like that's not god. But like, so similarly, like that, we know what that feels like, how good that feels, how juicy and good that feels when you kind of align that way. So Swedenborg says how it's like our personal system is a microcosm of that macrocosm of self and parts of the divine with each of us.
Hmm.
And uh, and yeah, it's the same with guides and what Swedenborg calls angels and spirits is like you said with like the different they're all just at various stages of being in that relationship and alignment with divine inflow, like have been willing to open more and more to it. um and he says the closer we come into union with the divine, the more distinctly we feel as like, oh, I'm finally me, like I really get who I am now. Just like that sense of self is actually its most pristine and like uh defined the more closely united we are with the divine. So we at once feel more clearly like, oh yeah, this is all this amazing relationship I get to have, and we feel the most like, oh, this is me. I'm myself
But
here.
I feel like like for my part, sometimes they feel like somehow if because I have a bunch of guides, and I feel like I sometimes run into like a trouble in using guides
Mm-hmm.
because my parts feel worried that that's going to noodle with their sovereignty.
Uh-huh.
You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? Like the guide
Totally.
it's gonna mess with me, or somehow like it's gonna dominate me. I'm gonna be controlled in some way. I don't know. I don't want to, what I don't know about you. Like my parts are very, they're like, we don't know. I don't trust,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this idea that guides, like a real guide, I love that phrase, get a better God, right?
Yes. Right.
Like if it's a pure guide or if it's a trustworthy guide, it's not going to do that to you.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not going to force you,
Yeah.
go anywhere that you're not ready to go, or let go of any belief or any burden or anything. It's just going to try to you know, do this, like
Yeah.
support you lovingly to come into alignment with the truth of who you really are on your time frame,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Honoring you, respecting you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And like I think that's such a healthy uh skepticism, just to put that word to it or something, of your parts, of sort of knowing, that doesn't feel right to me, or like I'm not okay with this relationship if there's going to be some kind of you telling me what's right for me kind of a thing, going on. um and Swedenborg has this, like, this is jumping off into like deep end Swedenborg stuff, but like
Let's do it.
because he describes, he was interacting with people that have left the material realm and are living and growing and being in the spiritual world. And uh, from his perspective too, he writes about children that have passed away, had short lives in this world, and then continue to grow, develop and grow in the spiritual world. And he says children who are being raised in the spiritual world go through a very particular phase of learning to say no, and how important saying no is for their own development, because there's so many spiritual influences, spirits and of different flavors want to kind of get the, you know spirits. I mean, there's certain spirits that want to just coerce other people, and like,
Yeah, 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 like what Bob talks about unattached burdens or demons or whatever you wanna call them. Uh-huh, uh-huh.
exactly right. And so like it's critical to sort of build that muscle spiritually of saying no, to know the difference between what's coming sort of at you sideways, which might be really beautiful, and helpful from a guide, versus what that direct divine inflow connection that you have, that is you, and that's the path to follow most, that any angelic guide, he would say, is just wanting to help you to that, never to go off course from that. And so there was this kind of connects with your question about why don't we know this yet, why hasn't Swedenborg sort of been more known.
Mhm.
So there was a psychologist named Wilson Van Dusen who I guess was practicing maybe as far back as the 60s, 70s, 80s or something, but he was a Swedenborgian, and um and I think, yeah, I think it was him who similarly, and so I can tell more of this story later, but like uh I don't know if he himself was raised Swedenborgian, but he had like a grandmother who said like read these books, like sort of gave them to him, and then he later picked it up and got really obsessed with it. But he was a psychologist, and he worked with primarily with like schizophrenics, like institutionalized people with schizophrenia. But he applied Swedenborg's ideas to working with them, and again, really understood, came to really be confident in that so much of what we call schizophrenia, that hearing voices and everything is just spirits, different ways that you're interacting with your porosity, like that veil is the boundary between you and what is not you is gotten all mixed up, and there's lots of influences and energies there that isn't in its most balanced, harmonious state. And so he's published many titles that you can find, and I think one is called the Presence of Other Worlds, where he also has an essay called The Presence of Spirits and Madness. That's was his uh, one of the works he's most well known for. But so he did this, and then this is really helpful for just anybody, is using what Swedenborg says to be able to tell the difference between what's an evil spirit versus an angel, is what Swedenborg would say, and that's one of the key things. Is the sort of shorthand that I use is, if it's a part of yourself, you know it feels like you and it wants what's best for you, like it wants, just like we know if it's a part, if it has a good intention for you
Hmm.
and it knows that it's you.
Hmm.
An angel has a good intention for you, or a good spirit, a guide, has a good intention for you, and they know they're not you. So they want to respect your freedom in the utmost, So any guide influence is going to, if it's, open to that inflow in their own process, they know that the best thing is to be respecting your freedom, supporting you, like you were using these hand gestures, and I feel like that's exactly what it is, this like, oh, see what you think. Yeah, like
Yeah, support. Yep.
support, and you figure, think about what feels right to you, like, and then so then an evil spirit, or more burden system or whatever, is going to uh, either just not not want what's best for you and doesn't want to respect your freedom, that the spectrum goes in the other direction of, just like you say, all the way to the unattached burdens that just want to, really are there to just get something from you that serves them, or feed off of the harm that they could cause you.
Yep. Hmm.
So yes, Swedenborg, um, one way that Jonathan Rose, who's one of the co-authors of Opening the Inner World, he's a Swedenborg translator, and has been doing it for decades and decades. Part of the this New Century Edition translation that we do. Um, he says Swedenborg's actually everywhere. We all just have cut the tag off, and like that doesn't matter. Like Swedenborg didn't first. He published anonymously for most of his life, and he didn't start a church. Like people started coordinating sort of religious circles around his texts after he died, but and he kind of would push people away. Like there's a couple, we have like letters, things in his lifetime where people would come to him sometimes wanting to sort of be disciples, learn from him or whatever, and he would just kind of politely say go away. Like that's not what this is about. Um, and uh and so Swedenborg is actually like the most influential and least known, like person in Western culture, and because his ideas did have this enormous influence uh, in England, and then in America at the uh, right after the, or during like the American Revolution, and then afterwards through the 19th century, um, in all
Are there
different. Mhm.
Are there particular, like, early Americans that he really particularly impacted?
Yeah. So Benjamin Franklin is one well-known name. So I don't know how much Benjamin Franklin read Swedenborg's works directly, but he helped fund the first English translation of one of Swedenborg's titles to get published in America. Um, and then you have pretty much all of the transcendentalists. Emerson wrote about Swedenborg, and Thoreau, all them, all our buddies. They're all
Uh-huh. I
John
love
Muir. So the whole um, there's works that have been published now, like people of who study religious history and stuff have sort of mapped Swedenborg's influence there with like environmentalism and
Mhm. So you said John Muir, Muir, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and Helen Keller. Uh, she has published two different titles. Um, Light in My Darkness is one, and I think the other one's called How I Would Help the World.
Mhm.
And so she was. I don't think she ever joined a Swedenborgian church, but like she was involved with the Swedenborg Foundation, with this organization that I'm um, now work for. That I mean, it's been around since 1850 or something. But so she was um, connected and writes some really amazing things about the kind of resonance that she felt with Swedenborg and his writings for her own inner world experience, as somebody who was blind and deaf, but then had a very full, rich life and inner world, kind of knowing we are not defined by our external material, existence here. So, oh, another main one is the family of the Jameses. So William James and
James.
Yep,
Okay.
James,
Wow.
and
Uh-huh.
and so that's the whole thread of Swedenborg into psychology. Carl Jung um, references Swedenborg, studied his works, and so it's just like it almost. And I could just list tons of poets and artists and uh, people that way who and people have done created those lists. You can find them online because there really is just really an amazing, far-reaching um, impact. That again, you had this like there were people who in England in the late or early 19th century, they or really maybe late 18th, like very 1790s, or something like that. Which Swedenborg died in 1772,
Okay.
right before the end of the American, Declaration of Independence and everything like that, the Revolutionary War, um, and then even French Revolution, all that sort of stuff. So he's like right before just this huge, world shaping
Hmm.
political things that happened in that milieu in London. There was a group of people who decided we want to dissent from the Church of England and create our own church of Swedenborgians that they called the New Jerusalem Church, uh, and so then that kind of jumped the pond, and then churches developed in America. So then you still have some these organizations that have evolved, to engage with Swedenborg that way, but his influence beyond that religious context is really uh, far flung and enormous. So it's a really interesting thing to study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your book on Swedenborg and IFS, which you wrote with Bob Falconer, does that talk more about the history or more about like, IFS? Can you tell me a little bit more about the book?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and for anyone listening or watching, like Melissa, you haven't read it yet, right? So
No,
this is
I haven't because, I'm cute.
well, no, and I think that's
My
great. This is the
beautiful
perfect.
vision to be super, like read it, but okay, whatever.
Well, and you're not like leading questions because you like don't already know the answer.
I
You're
know
giving me
nothing.
pages and
Okay,
pages.
I know
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly. So I think that's fun. Yeah, we it is not a history. I did want to give it has just enough of a introduction to Swedenborg, his biography, because, like all I said, it's a lot to kind of take in. And then there's also an overview of the basics of the IFS model.
Okay. Mhm.
But then the main thing is going through, really doing sort of a side by side comparison of,
Oh, that's just as yummy as it could be.
yes, of Swedenborg and IFS, and sort of what happens. I think Bob sort of uses this analogy: when you, like, you shine a light from over here from IFS and you shine a light from Swedenborg over here, what is that reality getting illuminated? And then that's like, whoa, and we all have access to it right here inside right now. And so we really wanted it to be like an empowering, um actually, you know what, the Amazon categorized it as like a subject guide. So like it is a subject guide, to just like
Oh, cool.
engaging
Huh.
in this territory, exploring this landscape. So we uh and all the through line is like, how is this serving healing? And as Bob Falconer now is pretty, confident in saying, he thinks all healing is fundamentally spiritual. That's And so how do we actually, which is just, it just makes so much sense. He does such a good job talking about that in his book, The Others Within Us, of like us thinking that we are not porous, that we're not a part of some larger spiritual system, however you want to think about it. That's what causes so much suffering, is to think that you're this hard shell in here and that's about it. And then once that deteriorates and your heart stops and you stop breathing, then that's the end of you know you. And anyway, it just seems to go, it does sort of fly in the face of so much direct experience that people have. And like you said, with IFS being a, how did you call it, an IFS mystic, like, what opens up? So that's why I liked that title of Opening the Inner World, because I really think the key to healing is learning how to navigate your inner realms. People can be so afraid, and maybe rightfully afraid, because there's things you got to have, there's things you have to have in place, to safely do work in that realm. But that's not a reason not to. It just means we have to be educated and, supported, and kind of know some, kind of tricks of the trade or whatever, like that. Just knowing, oh, is this spiritual energy I'm interacting with, does it want what's best for me? Is it respecting my freedom? Or does it feel kind of, you better do this or else, and that's like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm gonna, interact with that differently.
Yeah, because I feel like, I think one of the main problems people have in inner work is that, like, if you say, if you're, I don't know, going in a cave or something, right? Like you need to go down and da da da, and like
Mhm.
you need your rope, whatever, to be sturdy, and you need it to be in the center, you know what I mean? And what will happen is that people get slightly off. And I feel like there are a lot of religions and
Mhm.
new age ideologies, right? That, like, there's a slight toxic positivity or there's a slight spiritual bypass. And
Yep.
that's managers, okay? Primarily,
Yes.
it's managers, 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 managers. My blessings. I love managers. Here's my main manager.
Yay.
I have another one who you can tell maybe has some Judeo-Christian, energy in him, Joseph. Okay. So I use finger puppets to be my parts.
Love it.
I feel like, like we have that alignment, but we so often we just get off slightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so part of why we need to study and read and take in information or see a practitioner or whatever is to get that feedback, like, that's slightly off.
Yes.
Sometimes the reason why we don't get benefit from our spiritual or psychological, whatever inner work, energetic practices is because if you're slightly off and you're doing it from that off place,
Yeah.
what do you want? Like, you know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so it's so important to get really back into that pure, like neutral self space.
Yes.
And we're always like just slightly getting off and then coming back, getting off and coming back. Like that's normal,
Yep.
but it's so important to keep getting centered there.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, we talk about in the book. and of course Bob talks about this also in many other places, is like the importance of knowing what self energy feels like in yourself. So just that idea of like self is that center,
Mhm.
that isn't going to get. So first of all, even just believing that you have that capacity, that you do have this connection to self inside, self energy that knows when it's going, knows what going off even means and looks like, and then knows how to bring it back. Like that's revolutionary in itself, because again, my experience of religion is that it's not very empowering of yourself. It teaches me to distrust myself. And
Right, yeah.
if
Like
I go,
outsource that authority and like, oh my God, we
yeah,
need radical,
yeah,
radical self, permission. Like I am the arbiter of my life. And if like in all domains, if you notice your life, like with your eyeballs, with your body ball, whatever, like my parts love to say that, but if you are just attuned and you watch, like my spiritual teacher used to say, just a watching, right?
nice. Yes,
Just watch yourself without judging.
yeah,
I'm doing crazy shit every day.
yep,
Okay. It's not the point is to be perfect. It's just to watch.
yep,
Because I said to my teacher, I'm like, Master Healer, I'm eating ice cream all the time. What is wrong with me? He's like, oh, just a watching. Eat that ice cream for world peace. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? He would always say crazy stuff. And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? I don't even understand. Of course, we had like
yeah,
he's Korean. So his English was, I was like, eat the ice cream for world peace. Have you lost your mind? What are you talking about? He's like, oh, just a, just a watching, just to eat the ice cream. Oh, I'm eating the ice cream. And I'm like, at a certain point, like there's a transmission that goes beyond language. Like I kind of got what he was saying. He's like, just watch yourself doing what you're doing.
mm-hmm.
Watch it, okay? Do not judge it because that's my friends here, right? That's the managers going, oh my God, you're eating ice cream. Okay, forget that, right? No. Why am I eating ice cream? What made me eat the ice cream? How do I feel when I'm eating ice cream? If I need to eat the ice cream, I'm just eating the ice cream, but I got to watch myself,
Yeah,
feel myself. It's all about just like getting to know you.
yeah,
The deep trust, which I think you're saying what Swedenborg had, is this deep, profound belief that I think is the belief of all beliefs, right?
mm-hmm.
Which is that if I attune, truly attune,
Yes,
deep inside,
mm-hmm.
I will find that I am the compass and my compass is not broken.
Yes, 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 yes,
Because so many people really fundamentally do not trust the world, humans, or nature.
yeah,
Do not trust. So they think I need like, I don't know, pharmaceuticals to fix this thing instead of like listening to my body or, I need to count calories. I need to put numbers into it instead of, dude, 200 years ago, nobody was counting calories. They just ate until they were full because their body was the compass.
yes, yes,
Like your body is the compass. Fundamentally, if you trust the world, if you
yeah,
trust your body, if you
yep,
trust your consciousness, you will get to know what is the truth, what will guide me the right way, and my body will guide me the right way. I don't need to outsource that.
yes, yes.
That's the truth, the wisdom. That's like the deep truth and wisdom.
And that's what I love about IFS, and something else that just relates so much with Swedenborg is that it calls itself this constraint release model, that like this idea that you can um it's not a matter of
Adding. You're
building
not
up,
adding, you're
exactly
not
adding.
resourcing.
It's
Yes.
that when you do actually watch, why does it work to just watch?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when these everything out here starts to settle down and you let yourself just watch, it's not only you watching, it's that you are connected to the thing, which is, like you say, immovable, infinite and eternal love and wisdom itself, can't go off track, doesn't ever get broken, is just itself. And we then get to be a vessel for that and be aligned with that. And like, and so that's just that connection of like, why would that even work? And that's, and Swedenborg says the same thing. Like, the key to all of it is self-reflection. He's, you know, like reflecting on yourself. And just, if that's all you do, the rest is going to kind of take care of itself ultimately. You know, so like you said, keep eating the ice cream, just watch yourself, you know, watch. That's like, I think that's so great. And Swedenborg also, um again, which I love as a body worker, is he uh also challenges that like disembodiedness of spirituality. He makes this point of like, your soul is everywhere through your whole body, and the life in us that we're feeling is spiritual, you know, is spiritual reality. And so you have a spiritual body, like the you that is thinking and feeling all of your body and whatever is that eternal vessel that you are. And so, you know, at the end of our lives, these material cells that came together to be this amazing thing for this time, they go back, you know, return to dust or whatever, but that you still has all of the same senses because it was always your spirit sensing through your
Mhm.
body, and then your body being this perfect, you know, vessel for that. I mean, not to say that they're all perfect, you know, there's a lot of imperfections in the body that we have to experience and navigate, but like, that's that's the relationship. There's a relationship happening there too, so that you can trust the compass that your body is. You know, that was a
Mhm.
huge thing for my journey, was like learning to really listen. Like, so like I was saying in the book, Bob talks about um learning to really feel what that self energy feels like in yourself, because once you know that, then you can know when you're in it, when you're not in it, and that becomes your compass, because then when you're in it, the things happen in a very flowing way, you know, and then uh and you just learn to trust that more and more. And
Yeah,
so for me it was like, what does it feel like? Self-compassion meditations really helped me with this. Was like, what does feeling loved inside feel like? What sort of lights up, you know, how they like study the brain, like what lights up in my body when I'm feeling loved, or when I'm experiencing loving somebody else, like just sort of this amazing, you know, this appreciation and joy and, you know, just delight in their existence or something, that like there's a feeling that happens in my body, and like that love is divine love, you know, and then that is self energy, like that's what I get to be this vessel of. And so that, and that energy is everywhere through my body, you know, head to toe. And that love has wisdom, which is really just like this ability to perceive, you know, to perceive what's true, what's real, what's, where are there uh resistance to love, like where are these burdens that have built up. And again, it's not the like, oh, you better stop eating ice cream. It's like, oh, isn't that interesting, you know? Like there's just that curiosity. It's just always curious, always um having that compassion. So that's, it's I mean, it's just so fun that IFS put all of these useful words to all of that, and then getting to pair that with Swedenborg.
yeah, and I really like what you're saying about like how when we are like we're the compass, and when I pay attention to me, that's really honestly all I need to do.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
feel like sometimes managers get this idea that it has to be my trauma. Like I've got to, you know, like in classical IFS, right? Because IFS is, and we're IFS coaches, right?
Yes, yeah,
So, you know, we are extending IFS way past just let's heal trauma, right? We're
yeah,
going into how can we use, you know, like here's the dividing line, right? How can we use IFS to absolutely step into our divinity or our sovereignty or our highest self-actualization, right?
yeah, yeah.
And at that point, we're not just looking at like, okay, how do I, like, I don't have to just go back and look at all my traumas, which of course we do. Okay. And I'm like the poster child for trauma because I've like the world's biggest trauma history. It's preposterous. It's laughable, but
Hmm.
I've done over 8,000 hours of IFS on myself. And guess what? No one does that much therapy on themselves if they don't have to, right? Like,
Yes.
it's not like I just was like, it's not a walk in the park, you know? But anyway, my point is, though, that as you become more functional, you start to extend that capacity to look at yourself, to self reflect, to just watch yourself, right? To the dumbest shit. Okay. Like I'm minimizing my house. And so, like, do I really need that extra pillow? Do I need, and some people could say, Melissa, you don't need to be like so deep about your stuff. It's like, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be so deep about whatever I want, right?
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
mystic, so I'm going to do that. Okay. Second of all, when I decide, is this thing around me, is it like from the past? Is it holding fear? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, am I keeping this pillow because I think, oh, maybe I need an extra pillow? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't need that anymore. Okay.
Mhm.
So, like, whether it's your stuff or like, what are you going to eat for lunch? I
Mhm.
don't care. I think that when you start to really use IFS in radically weirdo ways,
Yeah.
right, to watch everything you do and how it impacts you and give your parts permission to say, I didn't like that, or that energy doesn't feel good. Like a great example is the other day, I was watching Upload on Amazon because I like that TV show. Okay. Because I watch a little TV, and there were commercials. Now, I have like almost zero exposure to commercials. I just, I never watch them. So I thought, I mean, the manager in me was like, this is 30 seconds, she'll be fine. No, I'm here to tell you, I was not fine. I thought that like, I really felt that the TV reached into my brain and poured like poison into me. I was like, I cannot vibrate with Febreze. Okay. Like that is the most disgusting thing. My consciousness was like, ew, like just ew. And I just was like, so I did IFS on how disgusting it was
Yeah.
to like have that. And also, like the commercials were very patronizing.
Mhm.
Like the whoever's mindset, whose ever consciousness it is that like creates the commercials, they're very
Yeah.
um patronizing. It's
Yes.
like there's something about it. It's just everything is gross and wrong and bad.
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah.
from a very bad place. They're not self-led at all. They're very fear-based and they're telling you like your house smells and we need to fix your house. I'm like, I don't know, it was just all bad. So
Yes.
by like giving myself permission to radically notice how poisoned I was, I could just be like, okay, this was terrible. I'm not judging myself that I like, watched it, like whatever. I F around and found out, like it
Mhm.
wasn't for me. So I just found another, like way to watch it without commercials. Cause like I'm allergic. I found out I'm allergic to commercials.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They're made by managers to poison your brain with manager energy, and I don't need that because I gotta like stay super pure. And
Mhm.
that may be like such a weird example, but that's the level, right, of
Yeah.
like awareness that we want to have where we safeguard our energy, our divinity, our sovereignty from all this garbage that's trying to pour into us from every side all the time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and it just what I hear and what you're saying too is that it's like there's not it's just a choice. You're just exercising your choice to say, that's not the energy I want. That doesn't feel great. Less of like it doesn't sound like that's coming from a managerial, oh no, we better not let this bad energy of the commercial get into us or it might X, Y, and Z. It's just like, no, that just doesn't feel good.
Felt nasty. It
Thanks.
was literally, it felt so gross. And I mean, I think I had to work against the managers who were like, it's not that big a deal. Cause that's like
Right.
the
Right.
national anthem of managers is it's not
Yeah.
that big a deal, right? Like I love you guys and everything is a big deal.
Yes.
Everything I feel is important.
Yes.
I will listen to my parts despite the fact that you think it's not a big deal. I don't care.
I
I
love
will
that.
listen because they said that they're disturbed. I will listen. I don't care.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that's like I with so there's lots of cool thoughts that that has stirred in me, but like um Swedenborg, I'm trying to think about how best to say this. You were just describing vibration, and energy and like resonating or not, and knowing the intention, or like you said, that's not coming from a self-led place, that commercial. And then this whole concept of, is it all just trauma healing or what's going on here? Like there's, it's not encapsulated in that way. It's like, so Swedenborg, again, he's writing from a kind of Christian context, so he uses biblical terms for things.
Mhm.
um, but he but then kind of redefines it in this way that you're almost like, wait, did that really come from the Bible? I don't, just because it's like just this whole concept. But one of those terms is what he calls regeneration,
Mm,
or spiritual rebirth. That we are this on this regeneration process that really reflects, well, our physical life. That's why it talks about like being reborn, because like uh I mean, in some ways he gives this analogy that like all of us in our lives in this world, we are in the womb of the divine, developing until we're born. And the being born is actually like being born into the spiritual world, like we're when
mhm,
we've finished our gestation in this realm.
mhm,
um and uh but so we it's all about that spiritual growth process. And we all come into this world um burdened. There's always the legacy burden. Swedenborg has this term called hereditary evil. Like we're all uh we all just like, there's always a good intention at the heart of a part, and we all have our self that then gets, our systems gets burdened, self gets exiled, all these sorts of things happen. That's, we all are uh designed as these unique vessels of divine love and wisdom, but we have intergenerational burdens and trauma and everything. And so we go through a process of clearing that stuff out. Either we're participatory in it and we perpetuate it, or we use our freedom, our agency to go through a process of releasing those burdens, healing what needs to be healed. But then beyond that, it really is this self actualization. It's just becoming that whole, it's like they're so connected in some ways, but like it's always that process of liberation, of like actually freeing yourself to be, like you said, to follow your own inner compass of who
mhm,
you are. And then that's just actually this beautiful ongoing journey that is not only personal either. It again connects with your, Swedenborg would say, like your spiritual communities. So whether that's your biological, your genetic heritage, and the spiritual beings that are connected there, or and your, if future, but also beyond any genetic component, like just your spiritual communities based on the unique vessel of love and wisdom that you are, that we don't exist apart from those communities. And so our spiritual growth journey is this, uh you know okay, yeah, I don't think I've said this yet in this call, that like what Swedenborg learned through his spiritual awakening that freaked him out at first was that all of his thoughts and feelings flowed in. He said nothing was actually his. Like he would have, if he was having any sort of a thought or a feeling, and then the spiritual communities that were associated with that moved away from him, he would stop having that thought and feeling. And then
mm,
when they came back, he would be having that thought and feeling again. But
mm,
it was, so again, this interesting relationship between what is our identity. So he says, what is, he said he knew that anybody hearing him write any of this would be thinking like, well, if that's all, you're like, what are you? If you're just, if everything's just flowing in. And he said, no, when he really got that, he felt like he was living for the first time, and that uh your self is choice. It is choosing what flows in, what do you want to identify with.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that power of choosing it, of saying, "Oh, I do want to identify with this." That's enormously, can be this joy-filled, exhilarated thing. And then to choose to not identify with something that you've been identifying with for a long time, that is like the definition of healing. You know,
yep,
it's That's unburdening, is not realizing, oh, this stuff that's in me isn't me. And so, first of all, okay, it's not me. It really doesn't even matter if it's here or not. Okay, fine. Maybe we'll sweep it out. Or it can be a very wonderful process of actually releasing it, or it just sort of spontaneously leaves your system once you recognize it's not you. Um, so, that key of our identity and what we choose to identify with is that just ongoing process. That's why, like you got to have that, oh, I don't want to identify with this energy that is the Febreze. And obviously the Febreze is like, identify with me, believe what I'm telling you, you have to go get this stuff to make your house smell different, whatever.
I think I will not buy something that gives me cancer just for fun, thanks, but okay. You over there, not for me, yeah.
Yeah. So right. It goes so far beyond trauma healing because it is just the journey of you becoming, and that's just such an amazing thing.
Yeah, and I would like when you say that, what I think about is that part of the process for me, I think identity is such a powerful word, right? Like, is my identity fundamentally centered in parts or is it centered in self?
Hmm.
And one way to look at the spiritual journey or the healing journey, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
is that slowly but surely, my identity is becoming more and more like centered in self and not parts.
Hmm.
And so for me, one of the ways that that happens is that because I look at the self as a servant leader to the parts, I think about the parts as having a self themselves,
Exactly. Yes.
right? Because the system has a self and then you have parts, but then parts have a self.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I'm trying to help my parts develop their self.
Yes. Yes.
I think is kind of like that's why I call like
Yeah.
my Substack radical IFS.
Yes.
That's radical IFS, right? I mean,
Yes.
your first step is you just need to know you have a self and parts. Step
Hmm.
one. And that's kind of like classical IFS or trauma IFS or IFS therapy. But I think that once you're solid in that, you can go to the next step, which is more radical IFS or like where IFS coaching starts to happen, which is
Yeah.
I'm not just having a self and parts, but I'm also having a self that develops the self of my parts.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Oh, and then that becomes just this ongoing identity development journey, and your parts get to choose what in them they don't want to identify with anymore and what feels like them, what makes them feel the most
Yeah.
them. Like whatever that is. And that's like, you can't even predict it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm this person. I love
It's
baseball.
it's
I
so
love.
weird. I mean, my parts like I just like this manager Green, right? Okay, Green
Yeah.
used to be the leader of my managers because I kind of organized my parts into like a leader of the managers, firefighters, and exiles, like
Hmm.
internal democracy. But Green was like, you know what? I hate this job. I hate it. I don't like helping. Like, because managers should not be noodling with the emotional development of other parts anyway. That is the job of self. It is not even a job
Yeah.
that managers are good at. Green's like,
Right.
you know what I like to do? Subscribe and save.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I like to do? I like to clip coupons and research stuff and be the person who the buying agent here. Okay. That's all I like to do. And I love doing it. And that's all
Yeah.
I want to do. And I mean, my other parts, like, Sharky, my main firefighter's like, you like to what?
Yes.
My firefighters would never, they don't give a flip, you know?
Yes.
Like, what are you talking about, Green? And Green's like, I'm a homebody. I like to do homebody stuff. Okay. So just leave me alone. I'm not meddling with you guys. And all I'm going to do is just clip coupons, okay? That's what I love to do.
I love it.
Like when you learn like what when parts start to come back into their right relationship with like what they really like to do, it's so fun. It's glorious.
Yes, yes, totally.
Nobody else is as good at like buying stuff as Green. And we're like, Green, we need stuff. And then Green's like, I will get you that stuff on sale.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Oh,
Oh.
so great. Because managers are great at things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're good at things, research, scheduling.
Yes,
They're
yes.
not good at managing other people. Okay.
Right.
Not
Yes.
their,
And when you say that, it makes, I've at times learned and adopted the language and, framing of like codependency, or just like that, like trying to, at my parts of like sort of discerning right relationship and stuff like that. And like that, just hearing you say that connected some dots for me of like, oh yeah, that is, managers can feel like they are responsible for the emotional experience of other parts. And
they're
it's
not.
like, oh,
I know.
exactly. Yeah, like,
They're
yeah,
paramedics. When
yeah,
they see an exile and that it's all like, the managers are like, oh my God, I gotta go help you. They come in and you're like, Green, you're good at buying things. How are you going to help this exile? What would it be like if I could help them and you could go chill?
yes,
Like,
yes,
but I want to help. I'm like, I know you do. And does it ever go well? And Green's like,
yes.
no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
It's just like, I get that you were like, as a child, yes, you were the paramedic. Okay.
right,
But you
right.
were a 7-year-old paramedic. And do we really want 7-year-old paramedics to come to the scene of no, we
Yep,
don't. I
right.
got it now. We're good.
You can go scroll for the next latest,
Like whatever it is, I mean, just go buy some stuff, Green. Seriously, like no, you don't need to help this exile. You're just gonna make it worse.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
exile always like Green, stay away from me. No, I mean it doesn't help, right? My
Oh,
Substack is just like I don't like entry after entry after entry after entry of people going, Green, why? Why are you bothering us? And Green going, because I'm sorry. And it's just repair, 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 repair. I mean, it's years.
and like Green, we love you, like Green is like,
Honestly, we love Green, but for the love of God, Green, just stop. And Green's like, but and also, I mean, that I feel like when you come into this place where you really love your parts, where you really, really love them as individuals, you have
yes,
so much compassion because poor Green had
yes,
to do this job my whole childhood, right?
yes,
No skills training,
yes,
nothing.
yes,
Did their best. Their best was slightly crap, but that's nobody's fault, right? But I mean, hey, I survived, so go Green, right?
yes, right?
But now to say, okay, look, I understand that like for 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, you had to do this job that you had no training for, that you were not the right person for, but you
Yeah,
did it because of your loyalty and dedication to me. Hello. And now we're asking you to retrain and let it go. That maybe that might take longer than 5 years to like stop that crap, right? And so every
right.
time Green does it, Green's like, but I didn't mean to. It's just like
Yes,
I'm just so compulsive. And it's like, you know what? We love you. And so
yes,
it's okay. And
yes.
please stop. And then we have a repair and then we go on. But I mean, I'm at the long tail. I like to think of that. What do you call it? It's like a bell curve.
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
A long tail of that because Green's like so much better. I'll go for weeks without Green interrupting somebody, which is truly a miracle. But
Yeah,
every now and then we'll have a huge, huge blowout and then we'll just have a huge repair. So that's fine, because you gotta do inner relationship building and repair with your parts, just like any other community, right? So
right, exactly. And that's what, yeah, and I mean, I just keep like, inserting Swedenborg stuff because that's sort of my role here right now.
yeah, say more.
Swedenborg says that all of heaven, first of all, if you could sort of take it all in at one as one totality, it looks like a single human being. And
Mm,
that is the divine. And so the divine is only fully expressed through a web of interrelationships of parts. And so then we are made in the, if you zoom in on a spiritual community in heaven, it looks like a single individual. And then you zoom in there and oh, there's a bunch of individuals, but then each one, et cetera. It just goes down. And so then there's always a multiplicity of parts creating a system,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
but that system is, uh, there's different ways Swedenborg says it, but mutual love is the term that um, that's like, that's what rules in heaven, or that's what makes heaven. It's just mutual love. And that's also kind of how you can tell, like, parts that aren't ready to take that in, can't sort of vibe with that. They're like, no, I'll take self-hatred, thanks. Like that's more my vibe right now, like whatever. And like that's the growth process. But like, so yeah, that you are becoming uh heaven when you're having that just beautiful, real, can't make it up, mutual love experience of you and your parts. Like I just love that, love all your parts and what their relationships, like it's just so great. I just love it.
Oh, these words are just so yummy. Mutual love, and you're becoming heaven
Yeah.
when you are working through your inner conflicts.
Yes.
Sometimes my managers, like these guys, they think, what am I doing spending an hour having a repair between two imaginary weirdos,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not working on my trauma, like Green and LB the other day, they got into such a fight about my Harry Potter books.
Uh-huh.
Because LB was like, look, we only read them every 2 or 3 years. Why can't we just get them out of the library? Because LB's on a tear, wants to get rid of like all the
Minimize
stuff.
it. Yes. Right. Right.
And Green's like, no, because 7 books is annoying to get out of the library and get it in, and do they all have them all at the same time and all this blah blah blah. Like it's too much work for me, okay? That's
Yes.
too much work for me, LB. And
Yes.
LB, now, sometimes even my exiles are rude. And LB goes, well, what are you, a hoarder? And Green's like, oh, food. So big blowout, right? Like huge repair needed, like so rude. Oh my God, why would you say that to someone that's so rude? And Green was like, well, this is exactly why I don't talk to you about like, what I want or don't want. Because
Yes.
LB will say, I need to get rid of this. And Green will say nothing. And then it won't go out of the house. And then LB will be like, why isn't it out of the house? And Green will be like, well, because I want to keep it. And then
Right.
LB is like, but are you passive aggressive? Why don't you just tell me in the first place? And Green's like, oh, because maybe I'll get called a name. How about that? So
Yes.
right. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's just have a repair. Let's really talk it out. And it probably took me 2 or 3 hours, honestly, of really intense IFS work between them both.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at this pattern of here's Green, who is being passive aggressive, owning that. Yeah, okay, I'm doing that. And LB to be like, I'm being an asshole because I called you a name and that's rude too. And I
Yes.
see our pattern, right?
Yes.
Because like they can both own their pattern and they both wanna, not be idiots to each other. Like,
Yeah.
what would it be like if we invest the time to develop this, like you were saying, I love the phrases, mutual love,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can both have a more divine relationship where both of us are, really actualizing ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't want to be calling you a name. I don't want to be passive aggressive. So both of us have to do work to do better.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this work, which is so bizarre to some, I mean, someone on the outside looking at this is like, you're spending time on what?
Yeah.
These are two like, somebody who doesn't know IFS would be like, these are imaginary entities in your mind that you're having like a 3-hour conversation to repair like a disagreement about Harry Potter books. Like, have you lost your mind? Right? No, I am finding my mind,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? I am taking all these ideas, whether it's Swedenborg or IFS or whatever, right? I'm taking it so seriously that I am really investing time
Yeah.
to really upgrade, and what was the word? Regeneration?
Yeah. Regeneration. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, to enact real somatic regeneration inside of my consciousness so that my consciousness works better because I've
Yeah.
parsed it out into parts.
Yeah.
I've identified different patterns in my crazy consciousness.
Yep.
And now both of my parts are going to work on upgrading their patterns so that my whole system can work better.
Yes,
That's
yes,
what we're talking
yes. Yep. And the like, exactly. And so, because Swedenborg says that, um, we spend most of our lives not conscious of any of that stuff, but it's all what's there going on all the time, you
about.
know? So anybody who says, oh, how are you spending that time? Yeah, they're just not aware of the inner conversations and, dynamics that are going on. But because Swedenborg says that that's what he sees, that's what angels do for people who have entered, newcomers to the spiritual world. It's all about being able to see and follow and understand what's going on those the deeper levels. And then, but then even that they see the larger community, like each of those parts of you are also connected to spiritual communities. And
Yeah.
then they're sort of feeling the weather systems of other energies, just it's all interconnected. And so that's just like so delightful. So Swedenborg says like, I've talked about love and wisdom a bunch of like those are the divine qualities in essence. But so their opposite are triggering words for anybody who's raised Christian: evil and falsity. Like, so the opposite of love is evil, and the opposite of truth is falsity. So like those are the terms Swedenborg uses, but it really just translates into um, the burdens
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
IFS describes. That's uh, the reason why I wanted to mention it, because Swedenborg goes into such detail around what the process of regeneration is, of like what's going on in our minds and our psyches, and it's um, just this matching up love and wisdom together, so creating these little love and truth bonds, and then breaking apart and releasing the evil and falsity kind of gunk that gets in there. And like uh there's different way, like one, and again, all quote unquote evil and falsity arises from um appearances, from what, like, uh again, because Swedenborg says like in one place he says evil consists in disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just, so we, anyway, that separateness, like the appearance that we're even separate, the appearance that we have to, I got to take care of what's mine or else, like that just breeds all kinds of, eventually it becomes harmful in
Mm-hmm.
all manner of ways, and that sense of uh you know a will that only serves itself and thinks it has to and whatever, or anyway. And so um in our, so every vessel and us on the whole have what Swedenborg calls your will and your understanding. And so like your will is the vessel for love, your understanding is a vessel for wisdom, but then the will can get all burdened by evil, and the understanding can get all confused by falsity. And so every part has their own will and understanding and gets to uh that's like the principle, like basics of regeneration is like removing, either falsity that got paired with some love in some way, or like this
Mm-hmm.
evil that's kind of connected to some idea of truth that obviously isn't really true because it's not loving. So that's, falsity, like, and then that, those things, you get more and more clarity, on what that is, and then more openness to love. And then that's the whole, we're all getting to do that all the time, in our parts and outside. So, yeah.
Kelsey, this has been so fabulous. I mean, we could probably go on forever, right? But we
Yes.
probably should
Yes.
bring it to a close here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, any last things you want to say? Or that was a
Um,
good one, though.
well, just maybe logistically, like Opening the Inner World is available on Amazon or on the Swedenborg Foundation website um, for purchase. And uh, also, so yeah, I think it's a really accessible book. It's based on these recorded conversations between Jonathan, Bob, and myself. So our voices are retained in edited book that has, you know, chapters and sections. So um, I think it's a really great book that I hope will, you know, help do this introduction to like what just feels just like this endless and amazing exploration of our own inner worlds. And yeah, just thanks so much to you, Melissa. It's so much fun to like, I could hear you talk about your parts all day. Like, all right, story time. You know, Melissa,
Yeah.
what's going on?
If people like to learn more about my crazy parts and their adventures, my Substack is Radical IFS, substack.com. So there's like, I don't know, I think I have at least 80 different little conversations between my parts. So
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
yeah. All
Great.
right. And so it's opening the inner worlds. I've got to get this book because I am on fire now to like learn more about Swedenborg, quite frankly. You
I
are
know. Yeah.
emissary of Swedenborg for the IFS community. So Chelsea, thank you.
Yes. Yes. And like, I am just so grateful and I look forward to talking about this anytime.
Thank you.